All right, home stretch here. We're into the podcast stuff. And this is the whole reason we were supposed to do this, right? People interested in the podcast tech we have going on here. A bit of a studio tour. Let's start here. Audio Technica ATR 2100X microphone. Don't worry. A lot of these pieces of equipment are going to have long names like that with a lot of numbers. All of it is in the show notes. This is a straight up entry-level microphone that has both a headphone jack built in and a USB-C port built in and an XLR port built in. If you don't know what XLR is, don't worry about it. You don't have to know. It is the professional level of cabling you would use on a microphone. So you can use this on your mixer. But it also has a USB-C port, which means you just plug it directly into your computer. If you're just looking for something to use on your Zoom meetings, if you're just trying to take down some voice notes on your computer, if you want to plug it right into your iPad or your iPhone, which is USB-C enabled, or your Android, you can do that. And the headphone jack built into it allows you to live monitor, which again just means I can hear myself while I'm talking, so I know that I'm keeping my levels where I want to, and I can hear the person I'm chatting with over Zoom. It's beauty in that regard. It's entry level. It sounds fine. I'm not trying to dunk on anybody when I say this. This is the microphone Steve Lloyd used to host the TSN 1200 midday show from his house for like a year during the pandemic, and nobody knew the difference between him being there or him being in studio. It's a good microphone, does not cost a fortune, and is on sale right now. I like this one. This is one of the very first microphones that Rob and I used when we were starting off the show. And if this is something you're looking at doing, whether it be for a podcast, whether it be for YouTube, man, go ahead and check out the Audio Technica ATR 2100X. Make sure it's the X version because that is USB-C. You don't want to go ahead with the old one, but just go ahead and follow our link. It'll take you right to the correct one. The Blue Encore 200 microphone is also one that I have linked here. It's a slight step up from that. It's XLR only, not USB. So you can't go directly into your computer with this, but you can go directly into an audio interface or a mixer with this. But it's still reasonably entry level, but it's nice. It's got kind of a lower sound. It's got kind of that broadcast sound. We used these for a very long time. When we were finally ready to upgrade and try something new, something a little more professional, we went to the Blue Encore 200. It does require phantom power, which almost every interface and mixer you'll pick up will have anyway. And phantom power just means it requires a little juice, a little electricity, and since you don't plug your microphones into the wall, that has to come from your interface. Most dynamic microphones, and all the microphones we've listed here are dynamic microphones. Most dynamic microphones don't require that phantom power. That's why I'm mentioning this here, is because this one actually does. They're not expensive, but they do give you a little closer to that broadcast sound. Rode PodMic USB. This is probably the one if you wanted to step up from the Audio Technica ATR 2100, which was the first microphone we mentioned, and you're not sure you're ready to go XLR only, Pro only on the Blue Encore 200, I would go with this. Again, it has a headphone jack built into it. It has both USB, so you can plug it into your computer, and XLR if you'd rather plug it into a mixer or an audio interface. And when you do that, it comes with an app called Rode Central, and you can tinker with the sound of it a little bit. You can make your voice a little more bassy. You can make it a little higher. You can take some of the muddiness out of it. You can give yourself more of that broadcast sound if you want to, play away at the middle of it. It kind of has a mixer built into it when it's USB. And that's really interesting. And like I said, you can plug your headphones right into it. And so it's almost like having a little mixer built into the microphone. You don't need anything else. This is perfect. If you know what you're doing will always be just Zoom, just online. It's a step up from the Audio Technica ATR 2100. This is one that I use frequently when I'm at the cottage. And, out of the studio, I don't have our main studio mics. I use this one quite a bit. Both for online shows and for ones where we have guests in person. But now as we move up to kind of the top level that I'm recommending, there are other microphones. Look, if you want, you can spend thousands of dollars on microphones. I'm not here to recommend you do that. The one that I use here in studio, the one that Rob and Lever and everybody uses here, we've got a few of them here in the TCA studio, is the Electro Voice RE320. The thing you have to understand when you plug a microphone in to do an online show is that the signal will get degraded every time you move through Wi-Fi. Every time you go up to stream, whether it be on YouTube, it chips away at the signal. And so you can buy a $1,000 microphone if you want to, but it won't sound like a $1,000 microphone on YouTube if that's where you're looking to stream to. It won't sound that way if you do all your shows on Zoom, because it will get degraded when it gets uploaded. Now, if you're going to do your show like a bunch of the ones we do here, always in person, yeah, you'll get the return on investment there. But if all your stuff is always going to be online and you want to spend thousands of dollars on a microphone, you will not get return on investment. And that's where this microphone comes in. The Electro Voice RE20 is a studio caliber microphone for radio that goes back like 50 years. The Electro Voice RE27ND is almost exactly the same. The Electro Voice RE320 that I'm recommending here is that microphone, but prepared to do studio work and online work. It's cheaper than both of those two microphones, but not cheap at all. Like, for those of you who are always leaving comments about how TCA's audio sounds better than most of its competition, it's A, because we're doing our stuff in person instead of on YouTube, and B, because we have microphones like this that are capable of shifting back and forth between both. So, look, the last I saw online, this is right now about 20% off. It is the same microphone I've been using for about 7 years now, and I just haven't felt the need to upgrade. These are terrific microphones. They are broadcast quality without broadcast cost. So Electro Voice RE320, again, linked in the show notes, wherever you're hearing us, or at tallcanaudio.com. The headphones we use here, look, don't spend a ton of money on this, especially for your guests. Like here, we have multiple seats around the TCA studio desk. The stuff that is on the other side of the table for headphones is not as good as what's on my side. Maybe that sounds a little douchey, right? But I'm the one who's going to sit here when they all leave and edit. I'm using a set of Audio-Technica M50X. Audio-Technica ATH M50X headphones. These are studio monitor quality headphones. And the difference is when you buy a set of Bose headphones, when you buy a set of Sony headphones, they sound awesome, and they're supposed to. The technology built into them helps boost the bass, if that's what you want, helps color the vocals, helps, like, they can make a bad track sound really good. If you're sitting here editing, that's not what you want. I have to know whether the original file sounds good. Like, if we record a show here that sounds like shit and just count on you all having $300 headphones that'll make it sound okay, that's not the right way to do your show. So you need to know when you're editing, when you're producing a podcast or music or whatever it might be, the true sound. So if I plug a pair of Bose headphones into our system here and edit that way, it'll sound good, and I'll just go, sweet, I have no work to do. But anybody out there who's not using a pair of Bose headphones won't think it sounds good. So studio monitor headphones are straight headphones, are uncolored headphones, if that makes sense to you, right? They give you exactly what it sounds like, and you can then say as you're editing, little too much bass on Rob, little too much treble on Matt, they're talking over each other. It gives you a more true, it's not trying to make whatever you're listening to sound good. It's trying to tell you exactly what you have, you know, how it actually sounds. That's the difference between both monitor headphones and studio monitors versus like living room speakers. Living room speakers will sound awesome no matter what you play through them. If the file is shit and you play them through living room speakers, they'll make it sound good. If the file is shit and you play it through Studio Monitors, it'll tell you, no, that's shit, and allow you to fix it. So that's the difference. So these are the Audio-Technica ATH M50X. There are cheaper versions, the Audio-Technica ATH M20s. You could put on the other side of the table in a place like this, because those people just need to hear the conversation, need to hear the sound effects, they don't actually have to sit and edit with them. Those are significantly cheaper, and you'll find all of that if you click on the M50X link that we have here. You can grab the M20s and still support the show. As long as you stay on Amazon after clicking one of our links, we'll get a little kickback, and we love that. And we appreciate you guys for doing it. All right, a couple of audio interfaces here quickly. The one we use every day in the studio, whether it's me and Lee or me and Bob, is the Focusrite Vocaster 2. And it is idiot-proof, which is why I like it. I can't fuck too much up. 2 microphone inputs, 2 headphone inputs. You can adjust the levels on the unit or in the software, which is called the Vocaster Hub. This thing is designed specifically for podcasting. So it has the 2 microphone inputs and one more, or 2 more, technically. You can hardwire your phone into this. And, you guys heard this a few weeks ago. We talked to Arash Madani when Lever was in here. And that was no more complicated than just running one cable out of it, which is always plugged in. Lever just plugs that into the bottom of his phone when Arash phones, and all of a sudden he's in the show with no more work than that. No checking levels, no crazy wiring. This is meant for conversations. It's not meant for music production. It's not meant for anything like that. It's just about having a conversation and bringing extra people into it. There is also Bluetooth built into that. So had we not had the cable available, we just allow him to dial in via Bluetooth. It's an awesome little system. The only drawback, and we'll get to the thing I use to get around that in a second, is that it's only 2 microphone inputs. Now, for a lot of people, for a lot of shows, that's plenty. But occasionally, as you guys know, we have more than 2 guests in here, and that can be limiting. But if you only have 2 guests, and maybe 2 guests and 1 remote guest, the Vocaster 2 is incredible. If it's just you and a remote guest, either because you're doing your own show, it will always be just 1 microphone, or whether it's you, 1 microphone, and a guest dialing in, there's a Vocaster 1. It's obviously less expensive. The sound quality, everything that goes into it is just as good. But what you're hearing me talk through right now, what you've heard Rob and I using in studio, what you've heard Lee and I using in studio, is the Vocaster 2. Both of them are fantastic, linked here below. Every now and then, though, that's not enough. We need more inputs. And for that, we use something that the podcasting community has really rallied around, really loves. Again, it's designed specifically for podcasting. A lot of times, the things that would get used were meant for music and would end up having to be adapted, or you'd have to find a way to use it for podcasting. This is another one like the Vocaster that I just talked about that was designed specifically for podcasting. It is the Zoom PodTrack P4. And this is a bit of a tank. The drawback on it is it doesn't feel like a tank, like it's made of plastic. It works really good, honestly, but it doesn't feel high end. But it has 4 XLR microphone inputs at the top. You can also bring in a phone call. You can also bring in just, maybe it's Zoom or whatever on line 4. It's a little handheld device, and it has 4 headphone jacks, so you can run out to 4 different guests. You can run their 4 microphones all into it, or 2 microphones and a Zoom guest and a phone guest, or 3 microphones and just a Zoom guest. Like, the connectivity on it is fantastic. And this is what I take to the cottage when you guys are hearing the show over the summer. It's my microphone going into it, and then whoever, whether it be Bunda or Lever or Shrides, can check in through this device, whether it be online or via FaceTime or whatever it might be, and we can get it done that way. Or if you have 4 people in person, you just plug 4 microphones into it and you can get off and running that way. The sound quality on those hard mics are not quite as good as the Vocaster. It's certainly not bad. It's lots of podcasts use it and you would never know that they're using this handheld device. But it's kind of a cheap plastic and it is a slightly downgraded sound quality. But like I said, you also get the 4 headphone outputs. Everybody can listen to the audio at their own volume. You get built-in, there's 4 like sound effect buttons that you can run your music with, or the sound effects you're using on the show that day with. Like, it's a really neat little unit. And that's what I use when I'm out and on the go, usually at the cottage or on the road. And when it's back here in the studio, I plug it in to the Vocaster as an output. And now that's where we record our backup. Like, the main file gets recorded to the computer, and this is used as a backup because it has its own. Like, the Vocaster is strictly an audio interface that gets you to the computer. The pod track here that I'm referring to can record without a computer. You can just sit down at a table somewhere as long as you've put a memory card in it and do it independently. So it's a really neat unit. I'm not trying to dump on it at all. When I tell you guys the drawbacks, I'm trying to be honest with you and tell you this is what it's really good for, and this is what some people complain about a little bit. Like, the plastic feel of it is not encouraging. The sound quality is a little down. But if you've been listening to this show and you hear all our summer episodes and think I sound fine, that's all coming out of this, the Zoom PodTrack P4. So it's not a bad device. I'm just making sure I'm being honest with you guys. And the last interface or mixer I would mention here is the one that we have had for like 8 years now. Yamaha MGXU. The X means it has effects, and the U means it's USB connectivity. There's the 12 is 12 inputs. They have an MG10, they have an MG12, they have an MG18. This is a mixer we used in the very early days of the podcast, and it will connect directly to the computer if you needed to. It can also stand alone. Like, maybe you're just running a dance or trying to wire up the choir and the preacher or whatever at a church. And I know that sounds funny, but this is the type of mixer that gets used in church services to make sure everybody can hear everything. 8 inputs as opposed to the 4 and the 2 that I've mentioned on the last things. Does not have its own standalone recording system. You can't put a memory card in it and record directly from it. But whether you have a band, you and your buddies like to play in the basement, or like a church service, or you're running a dance and just need to run some speakers out of it and plug a microphone into it to tell everybody when to, get loud or whatever you might be doing. This is a great mixer for that. Honestly, I have 2 of them. One of them sits here in the studio for when we need it for that kind of thing. And the other one was purchased back during the pandemic because they're not expensive for what they're capable of. And I went and stayed at my parents' place for like 12 weeks during the pandemic at one point, and it just made sense to buy another one of those mixers and just leave it down at their place. And so it's still usable whenever I'm down either at their house or we bring it up to the cottage, or it's a bit of a tank. Like, it's built well, can do whatever you need it to do, and it'll stand alone as an analog system or plug into your computer as a USB system. Both of them work just fine. Last 2 things here are computers. These are both Apple, and I understand that's not for everybody, but they are what we use here. And it's a little perplexing. I have a MacBook Pro from, I believe, 2018 or 2017. I think it's 2018. And it's still going, but I ask a lot less of it than I ask of the desktop iMac in the studio. And if that doesn't make any sense, it's because the iMac runs the whole show. There are things we do here, whether it be clips and music and everything else. We put a lot of miles on this iMac. And so I think it was a 2019 iMac that I had that was replaced earlier this year. Whereas the MacBook Pro that I have is older than this iMac and is still running past this iMac. But that's because A, it has to do that heavy lifting less often, and B, it doesn't get asked to do quite as heavy of lifting, right? Like there are that MacBook Pro, when I'm at the cottage, I just understand I can't ask it to do as much while we're recording, and I have to do way more work in post-production to make it sound good, to bring things up to standard. Whereas here in studio, I'm just like, no, I demand that this work right now, and it brings in the music, it brings in the sound effects, it brings in the backup recording and the main recording, everything that goes into it. So I guess it makes sense that I've had to replace the desktop more often. I'm surprised the laptop, the MacBook Pro, is still doing as well as it is, but I think it's just mileage. Like I said, I ask less of it, and I ask that less often. That being said, I will recommend a couple computers. I would never recommend in 2024 my 2018 MacBook Pro. That's just silly. And in 2020, Apple moved to their own processors. They call them M processors. They brought it in with M1, M2, and now they're up to M4. But on Amazon right now, the M3 MacBook Pro is on sale at a fantastic price. And look, if you're coming like me from somebody who has a pre-2020 MacBook, which has an Intel processor instead of a Apple M processor, this will blow your freaking mind at how much faster they are, how quick they do this kind of work. So the M3 MacBook, and look, they just unveiled a couple of weeks ago the M4 MacBook Pro, which is obviously a slight step up. But all the M3s now are on sale on Cyber Monday week. And so that's why I've linked to that. There's not going to be a huge... Look, if you are editing 4K video all the time and like really demanding of your computer, then fine, go with the M4. If you are somebody like me who's working with audio, who is... Well, whatever, you wouldn't need a MacBook Pro for like your web browsing and your email and stuff like that. But if you're doing stuff that isn't incredibly intensive, right? You're creating some content. Maybe you are maybe doing some Photoshop and things like that. M3 is so much of an upgrade. Like you wouldn't even know what you're missing out on M4. And so that's why I've linked that one instead of the M4. The M4, being brand new, is incredibly expensive. The M3 not only has already been cranked down a bit, but now has this Cyber Monday week deal on it. And so that's where I would go if I were you and you needed a laptop. And now the iMac is, like I said, it's my workhorse in the studio. I put this thing through the paces several times per week, especially for in-person guests. It's running multiple audio interfaces. It's running multiple backups. It's running multiple microphones here. I'm asking it to break down the audio shows later into clips for YouTube. And you can do that on other computers. But the speed that this does this, like, has shrunk my workflow time by like a third. It's incredible. So they just revealed the M4 iMac 2024. Mine is the M3, and I absolutely love it. At this point, everything that I said about the MacBook Pro above and why I would go with the year-old model is sort of what works against me recommending that on this one. The MacBook Pro is the powerhouse. It's the top-end everything, and so they charge you like that. The desktop here isn't quite the same on the iMac, and I would go M4 if you could afford it, right? At the 2024 M4, if you've got the money to do it, it's because the concept of it isn't quite as powerful as the MacBook Pro. No one is calling this a pro machine. And so you're better off future-proofing yourself by buying the most modern one and spending what you can there and knowing that it will last longer. Whereas on the MacBook Pro, they're saying right in the title, it is a pro machine. It has pro components and everything that goes into it, despite being one model older, means it will probably keep longer. So I think you can save some money on the M3 2023 MacBook Pro plus the Cyber Monday deal that's on it versus the M4 iMac 2024, which is not a Pro machine, I think you're better off to buy the most recent one and go that road.